Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I am your host and moderator, Cypher here, and we have a lot of things to cover today. But before we get into covering the news that was over the last week with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide, we have a few updates. So let's go ahead and get into those updates here now. So first off, thank you all for joining us. Without you, we would be nothing. Aside from that, we are also doing other podcasts, and I'm going to say this every week that we do this, but we do other podcasts. They include Cypher State, which is a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast, and that happens every Sunday at roughly about 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is a show co-hosted by Tiberius D, where we dive deep into a geopolitical issue, tackling a country or a particular conflict or something like that, and try to tell you what's going on with it and what we think is going to happen from whatever's going on. We also do another show with Tiberius on his channel. Calls it the Smart People's Conversation or just the Conversations. And that's basically we go into like some kind of like economics things, usually about the Fed and monetary policy and things like that. But there's a lot of stuff that we're going to cover there as well, assuming that everybody can show up this week after the holidays. But yeah, that's what we do. We're doing more debates and interviews and discussions as well. Those will be ad hoc as they are scheduled. They will be broadcasted live for the most part, unless the other person that's involved does not want to, for me to stream it because it's their show or what have you. But those will be up on our YouTube channel regardless, when we get them lightly edited for time and pulling out all the BS and maybe putting in a little intro about what the segment is about. So you can find those on our YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. All right. So let's begin with a brief update on Russia's war in Ukraine. The reporting is from The Guardian. This video map shows Russia's retreat from Kherson and where fighting still continues. Let's go ahead over to... Sure everything's working properly here. Oh, yeah, it is. This over... down... So security around public buildings in Spain. Oh, let's wait. So as we can see in this video, you can see that where there is limited Russia control and where Russia control actually is happening, and where on the front lines are where the pushing into Russia-controlled territory in eastern Ukraine, in the Donetsk region, is happening. And they're still, of course, still controlling much of the Novakharkov and Mariupol areas as well near Kherson. So that is where Russia is currently. It still retains much of the territory and where the fighting is going on. So Russia has retreated from Kherson officially. So that is the major city that has been liberated by the Ukrainian forces. Let's go ahead and get back into the copy. That. All right. So security around public buildings in Spain was tightened in response to a string of letter bombs that happened earlier this week. The Spanish officials confirmed that at least 6 letter bombs had been sent to high-profile targets in recent days, including the Ukrainian embassy in Madrid. Envelopes containing Envelopes containing pyrotechnic materials were also shipped to the U.S. Embassy, the Prime Minister's office, the Defense Ministry, a military airbase, and a Spanish arms manufacturer, the Interior Minister of Spain had said. 5 of the 6 known letters, all mailed in recent days, have been detected in time. In other words, they were intercepted before they were to go off. The letter sent to the Ukrainian mission exploded Wednesday, injuring an embassy employee, Spain's interior minister also had said. The worker suffered injuries that were not life-threatening and received medical care. The letter sent to the U.S. Embassy was intercepted midday Thursday, Spain's interior minister said, and showed similar characteristics to the previous ones. Quote, it added that the letter, quote, he added that the letter was then detonated by security officials in a controlled explosion. In a statement, the U.S. Embassy in Madrid confirmed that, quote, a suspicious package was received. It's unclear why Spain had been targeted in this way. The country's security services said an investigation was ongoing, and all the letters appeared to originate from inside the country. Madrid has been a steady supporter of Ukraine during the war, providing arms and taking in over 130,000 refugees. Continuing on, though, the U.S. Army has signed a new contract worth up to $1.2 billion with Raytheon missiles and defense to send 6 air defense missile systems to Ukraine as well. Raytheon also announced plans to manufacture Patriot missiles in Europe for the first time, partnering with missile developer MBDA to produce the weapons in Germany. On the front lines in Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine, Russia is losing manpower and equipment and making scant operational gains, according to analysts at the U.S. think tank, the Institute for the Study of War. This indicates Moscow has fundamentally failed to learn from the previous high-casualty campaigns concentrated on objectives of limited operational or strategic significance, the Institute had said. Continuing on, they said, quote, the cost associated with 6 months of brutal, grinding, and attrition-based combat around Bakhmut far outweighs any operational advantage that Russians can obtain from taking Bakhmut. On the battlefield in Ukraine, Russian soldiers have reportedly been fooled by Ukrainian troops into wasting ammunition on fake targets as well. That's hilarious. They're shooting at scarecrows. Jeez, that just shows you how poorly trained these new Russian fighters are. That they are being duped by by scarecrows. Jeez, that is ridiculous. So the Ukrainians have been using dummy HIMARS rocket launchers, among other things, according to a recent analyst by the Royal United Services Institute. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Thursday that Moscow was ready to listen if anyone wanted to hold talks on Ukraine. Lavrov, speaking at a news conference, said Ukrainian allegations that Russia wanted talks in order to win time to regroup and rebuild its armed forces was absurd. Let's be real. A lot of ceasefiring that happened is for one side or the other, or both sides, to regroup, retrain, re-equip their forces in order to make further strategic gains. Whoever breaks the ceasefire first, right? That's mostly what regrouping is done, especially in an ongoing hot conflict. If the conflict has waned down and it is fought to a complete stalemate, then usually that is where armistice is made and usually peace talks happen. But if there's still an ongoing conflict, it's more like, hey, we're getting beaten. Let's talk. Okay, let's talk. Lavrov went on to say that Russia also would be willing to return to talks with the West if it changed its mind about the merit of discussing security proposals, which Moscow floated in December, last December, that is. Hey, J-Oop, appreciate you joining us today. So Dan Solar, a former U.S. intelligence colonel, said last week that the Russian border fortifications near Ukraine's eastern Kharkiv region reflect that Russia must go on the defensive rather than the offensive in this war. This is one of the areas where Ukraine has been conducting a counteroffensive. Solar also noted that Russia has been attempting to capture the city of Bakhmut, a super important transportation hub in the eastern Donetsk region, for some time. This is a move that could potentially allow it to secure both Donetsk and Luhansk region and fend off further Ukrainian advances. Which is obvious, like, because where it's located, it's pretty much on like crossroad area, and if they can control those areas, then they can keep resupplying their troops and also stop supply coming in for Ukrainians as well. And finally, just 1 in 4 Russians are now in favor of keeping their troops in Ukraine, down from 57% in July. The findings were published in a report for senior government officials by the Kremlin's Federal Guard Services, which was obtained by Meduza, which was obtained by Meduza, an independent investigative news outlet. Attrition levels remain high on the front lines, as reports continue to surface of poor training and equipment for recently mobilized Russian conscripts. A war of attrition means, they're losing more and more ground, and they're losing more and more equipment and people. Quote, people perceive this is something that did not concern them. Now the risks have grown and people want peace talks to begin, said Denis Volkov, the head of the Levada Center, in response to the falling support among the public. And that, my friends, concludes our update on Ukraine. If you're just now joining us, welcome everybody. So glad you could be here. This is the Crowdsource News Roundup. We do this every week at Thursday, starting at roughly 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Excuse me. And going into roughly about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can catch us every Thursday, jump in chat, ask questions. You can jump into the Discord, ask questions live on air, have a little discussion about whatever you're hearing, whatever you want to talk about. That's what we do here. We also do a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast live on Twitch and YouTube every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is called Cypher State. We'll hope to see you there. I'm a little winded today. I forgot to start my timestamper. Oh. All right, well, let's get into some U.S. politics, starting off with news coming out of Congress. So here's a look at what happened last week in the House of Representatives. First up, House Democrats are preparing to transition power to a Republican majority on January 3rd. As we previously reported, current Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, stepped down from leadership for the 118th Congress. Pelosi was the first female Speaker of the House. In keeping with the drive for diversity that has marked Joe Biden's presidency and Democrats in general, the new House leadership positions are historical. Time reported that the ascendancy of Hakeem Jeffries of New York, Catherine Clark of Massachusetts, and Pete Aguilar of California to House Democratic Leader Whip and Caucus Chair respectively. To the House Democrats Leader, Whip, and Caucus Chair respectively, will revamp the face of the body that has historically been controlled by old white men. Thank you, Octavian. Appreciate it. At 52, Jeffries will represent a generational change from the current formative of House Democrat leaders, who are 3 decades older than himself. He became the chairman of the Democrats caucus in 2019, making him the youngest member serving in leadership. Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer noted the momentous and historic nature of the newly elected leadership, saying, quote, Hakeem Jeffries' elevation as House Democratic leader is a turning point in the history of the United States Congress. Never before has an African American or any leader of color held the top position for either party in either chamber. Aguilar, a California Democrat, is taking on the highest level job ever held by a Latino in the U.S. House, the number 3 position in the chamber's leadership, with a promise that his party will take back the majority in 2024. Excuse me. Clark will be the second woman, after Pelosi, to serve in one of the top 2 positions in House leadership, according to the Washington Post. The average age of Democrats' new top 3 leaders will drop by 31 years. That's ridiculous. We're going from super boomer to younger Gen X. Gen X is finally getting their time to shine, everybody. The lost generation coming into power. That's wow. That's man, been ruled by boomers our whole lives. I'm 37 years old now. Jeez. A person in Gen X, a person that could be my oldest brother, has not been in a leadership position. Wild. What Paul Ryan, I guess. So they kind of beat us to the punch a little bit there. Yeah. Huh. Oh well. So the new Democratic leaders came from very different backgrounds, but all have years of leadership experience in Congress. And experts say that their rise demonstrates how the women and people of color have finally had their time to build institutional power in the House. Kenneth Lowendy, an assistant professor of political science and public policy at the University of Michigan, has studied the impact of representation in Congress. If Democrats retake the House, Lowendy expects that the new leadership team might prompt more votes on legislation that would benefit underrepresented communities and install more diverse members in positions on key committees. Those changes could be years away, but with a slow leadership turnover, Democrats' votes on Wednesday is crucial for the first step. Quote, I'd say that really that really what this is the background for something bigger, Lowendy said. And thanks for the follow. J-Whoop and Octavian. Appreciate it. Appreciate the follows. Glad you're all here. Make this worth it. Excuse me. Need some more. You know what? I'm going to put on a little bit. No, background music's not good. No, not good. Just have to listen to my pretty voice. All right. Continuing on. House Majority Leadership, not so easy though. And of course, now we're going to talk about the Republicans. And boy, do they're coming in with the thinnest margin of any party in decades. Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, wants to be the new Speaker of the House. He wants it so badly. He's like, I can taste it. It's there. But based on media reports, that's how his quest is going. Badly. Because, my friends, this is important. There's a little bit of mutiny happening among the Republicans. Remember, the Republicans can only have 2 people not back a leader vote. And it goes poof. McCarthy, leader no more. Leader in waiting, so to speak. And it's not necessarily going to happen. Let's talk about more of it, all right? So McCarthy has been trying to cobble together enough of the current members of his conference to get him over the finish line when the new Congress is seated on January 3rd. In response to this uphill battle, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy this week warned fellow Republicans opposed to his potential speakership that Democrats could select the next speaker if the party doesn't stick together. True, and Democrats, I'm sure they're lobbying some people behind closed doors. Hey, you'll get this really sweet deal, my friend. My friend, you'll get this really sweet deal if you just come and join our party. You saw what happened to your party. You don't want to be with losers, right? You don't want to be with them. I hear they're a bunch of Nazis. Oh. Maybe we can sweeten that pot. Here's a little bit of a Nancy Pelosi's got a really big pull in Hollywood. Get you some sweet gigs. Get you some campaign money, right? Just come with us. Come with us. Right? That's what there's going. That I am 100% sure is happening right now. So Kevin McCarthy is not wrong when he says this. He's not wrong. So, but while he won the House GOP's nomination to be Speaker this week in a 188-31 vote, far more members voted against him than he can afford to lose on the floor. He won it by majority vote within the caucus, but he needs majority vote in the House to maintain it. That means that they have to come up with that sweet 215 vote. And a vocal fraction of Republicans who have the potential to make or break his speakership continue to withhold support. The count as of today is 213 Democratic seats and 221 Republican seats, with 2 races still to be called, a much slimmer majority than expected before Election Day. And we predicted it here, folks. We said that that Republicans would control the House 223 to Democrats 213 to 14. Like, that's how much we pay attention to this. All right. So just saying. And with that, just a handful, a mere 5, 10, 12 Republicans, defectors, could sink McCarthy's bid for speakership. A House Speaker needs to win a majority of votes of those casting a ballot for a candidate. That means unforeseen circumstances on everything from the coronavirus pandemic, Congress member getting sick, flight delays, weather, a more untoward sort of scandal that keeps somebody at bay. Tripping and falling. Could a trip on the Capitol steps could potentially stop McCarthy from getting speakership. That's how close it is. And it would make all the difference in the world. And with that, some conservatives have suggested that Representative Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, who challenged McCarthy for GOP leader in 2018, that he should be speaker. Jim Jordan, everybody, a person with a scandal of his own. He's got a scandal at his old college. He's got a scandal with Trump, backing Trump and being like rolling up his sleeves and trying to be all like lawyery and stuff. And I'm fighting for the people, but that people, I just mean Trump. They want him to be leader. They want him to be leader now. I mean, he's got a little bit of fire in him, a little fire in the belly. So they could do worse when it comes to ability, I guess, to say, at least within their conference. But do you really think the American people want somebody like Jim Jordan to be the leader of the House? You're like one step away from Marjorie Taylor Greene here. Maybe 2. I'll be generous. I'll say 2 steps away. Degrees of separation from Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan is 2. There's not much daylight there. Okay. Let's be real. However, though, Jim Jordan, who is likely to chair the House Judiciary Committee, has thrown his support behind McCarthy. I don't think many people want to be in this fight here, honestly, with you. It happened to Boner. It happened to Paul Ryan. It's really hard to wrangle this caucus, and it can make political careers. But it seems in the last, 6 to 8 years, it's broken some Republicans. It's broken some of them. I say that. Truly has. And as speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, once a doubter of McCarthy's ability to become speaker, has become one of his most vocal supporters for the post. And this is probably her support from it. Probably is just because Trump is like, McCarthy, he's a good guy. It's the best guy for the job. Okay. And anything that Trump says, I think MTG. Actually, I don't like doing it. Anything that Trump says, Taylor Greene is probably going to back. So that's probably why that's happening. And with that, she has warned that moderate Republicans could join Democrats and elect a compromise moderate speaker. Oh no, the horror. Somebody that represents most Americans. Oh shoot. Wouldn't that be the worst thing ever? And McCarthy skeptics have dismissed that prospect as a red herring. McCarthy has also said that he will not seek Democratic votes to be speaker. Well, of course not. Because more than likely, and this is This is a thing that has been said time and time and time again. Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. So all this hubbubaloo about whether or not he's going to be speaker or not is really for us political junkies. We like a little bit of drama, okay? And it's fun. It is fun to talk about. That's why we talked about it. It's important to talk about too, because the possibility is really there that he could not make it. But the chances of that are not as high, right? It's more than likely he's going to be speaker. But this drama surrounding it and the fact that people are openly defecting right now, similar to how they defected for Bonner, similar to how they defected for Paul Ryan, all those things together combined mean it's going to be a very contentious Republican caucus going into the 2023-2024 cycle, or in the House, the next 2 years. It's going to be a contentious caucus. I 100% believe that. Oh, yeah, next Friday, Octavian, I will be debating Rob Noor. Well, assuming it happens. I mean, it's happening on my end. I just, you never know. Something could happen, but that's the plan. But yeah, as I was saying, it's contentious. It's going to be contentious. So it'll be good times. It'll be good times. And when this happens, you can be sure to check this program out because we're going to have all the details for you. Just juicy little tidbits, analysis, the whole shebang. Speaking of analysis, speaking of what 2022 or the 2023 and 2024 year Congress is going to happen, we have the Republican agenda. And we're going to talk about this because a lot of things got lost in the... Well, that's a good way to say this. A lot of things got lost in the election denialism talk, especially on mainstream media, about what the Republicans were going to do. A lot of focus was on like, hey, they're picking election deniers. They're picking people that are just like beyond outside the Overton window, and we can't have this, right? But not a lot of focus was done on what the Republican agenda is. So we're going to cover that here. So prior to the midterm elections, Republicans running for House promised that they would focus on kitchen table issues like inflation, grocery and gas prices, and immigration. In an exclusive, wide-ranging interview with CNN 2 days before the midterm elections, McCarthy outlined his plans for power, which included tackling inflation, rising crime, and border security. 3 issues that became central to Republicans' closing pitch to voters. In that interview, he told the network that the, quote, first things you will see under a GOP majority is a bill to control the border first, as part of the Republican broader effort to frame the midterm elections as a referendum on crime and public safety. Post-election, though, this is important. All the talk of kitchen table issues has nearly disappeared in favor of revenge politics on steroids. A lot of people in the United States, politics are driven by spite, and we're going to see that on full display here. Full display. Full display. It's probably safe to assume that McCarthy feels like he has to focus on things like Hunter Biden's laptop, impeaching Biden, and several members of his cabinet launched an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. After all, these are the things that make members of the Freedom Caucus positively giddy. But strategists caution that this is exactly how they ended up with such a slim majority in the first place. For instance, let's review how America's older electorate actually voted. In House races across the country, voters over the age of 45 turned out to offer overwhelming support for candidates who ran on inflation and issues that affected everyday Americans. Republicans who campaigned on culture wars lost ground with older voters. This year, older Americans made it clear that a successful campaign platform is built on kitchen table issues. Right now, Republicans are examining the aftermath of the 2022 midterms, looking for a lesson as the party prepares to sharpen its messaging ahead of the next election cycle. Similar to what they did with the report in, was it 2012 when they didn't win the Senate, right? When they didn't win the Senate. 2008 too. They had a reckoning, right? And where did that go? Nowhere. Nothing was learned. They doubled down. One term Obama presidency, right? How did that work out? It didn't. They stopped a lot of Obama's policy agenda. They did, and they you know what? Kudos to the Senate in them. They were able to stop a lot of judge nominations. I personally don't think that was a good thing. It really did tear down some trust within the system. But that's what they wanted to play politics with, and they won. Conservatives have 3 Supreme Court justices on the bench, appointed by Trump. So, take some, you lose some. You lose a lot when you don't know how to play the game. Republicans played it pretty well. I'll give it to them. However, the path forward is clear. If Republicans want to earn the support of Americans' older electorate, they'll have to focus on these kitchen table issues again. They have the opportunity to show older voters that they care, that they can deliver by working across the aisle to lower the cost of prescription drugs, slash gas prices, and protect Social Security and Medicaid, or Medicare rather. But given the scornful rhetoric from McCarthy's, Jordan, Green, and others, unless a cross-section of moderate Republicans in the 118th Congress brings the Freedom Caucus to heel, they will waste this opportunity. During a private interplay meeting on Monday ahead of leadership elections, McCarthy promised he would strip power from Democrats, vowing to kick Minnesota Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar off the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and California Representative Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff off the House Intelligence Committee, according to a source in the room. So everyone knows why Ilhan Omar is not liked. She tells people that America does bad things, and she's a black woman. That's pretty much the reasons, right? She's a radical socialist. I wonder if people actually know the meaning of terms anymore. They don't. And Eric Swalwell, because, well, he got spied on kind of by a Chinese person, sort of. And I say kind of, sort of, because once he was alerted to that was the possibility, right? Kicked her to the curb, right? Completely. He followed when the FBI, or I believe it was the FBI. The FBI came and be like, "Hey, your intern isn't on the up and up." He's like, "Oh shit. All right, we got to do something." Okay, bye. Victor. So, and when all the reports came through and the FBI looked into it and other people looked into it, she didn't get anything from the spying. It was more trying to build connections and rapport and trust for parlaying into future endeavors. And it may have been that Swalwell wasn't even was probably a junior congressman when it happened, so it was pretty early too, if I recall correctly. So, but that's why. And then Adam Schiff, everyone knows why Adam Schiff, right? Adam Schiff is the guy that was in charge of impeaching Trump, and so they gotta get rid of him. He can't sit on the House Intelligence Committee. He's too much of a liability to us. That's why. They're being driven, motivated by revenge and spite. And you know what? Politics is some of that to a degree, so you can't really fault them too much for it, honestly. What is the quote? Politics is war by other means. Kowalski. Kalsowitz, not Kowalski. Kalsowitz. Yeah. Anyways, you know the quote. All right? You know the quote. And that's true. So, hey, more power to them, right? But if they focus on all the culture war stuff that really, really energizes the base, but a lot of people are like, "Hey, man, you know, I want sick days. I want childcare. You voted against lowering prescription drug prices, if they don't, they don't get past those issues, why should we assume that they can get anything done? And especially because Republicans has the slimmest majority, is if the majority will stand in the way of most of it, if not all, of their priorities in the chamber, it will not go well for them. So that concludes that bit. Now let's talk about the Senate. Some things happened in the Senate, especially today. And I'm going to eat a little bit of crow because it turns out I was wrong about something. So we're going to eat some crow live on air. Going to make some lefties very happy. But I was worried about some things, so we're going to talk about it. And of course, I'm talking about the railroad bill to avert a railroad worker strike. So the Senate today, it just happened, but we're going to read through this. The Senate today is moving toward a vote to avoid a looming railroad strike, which has the potential to cause significant economic damage in the U.S. right before the holiday season if lawmakers do not act. Quote, as a matter of process and timing and everything like that, I still think it probably comes together today, Senate Minority Whip John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, told reporters. Thune said that the Senate appears to be moving to vote on a bill the House passed on Wednesday, which imposes upon unions a contract agreement that was negotiated back in September. That agreement, which has already been approved by 8 transportation unions, but not a majority of all the transportation union workers, would grant workers 3 unpaid sick days as long as employers were provided with at least, this is ridiculous. This is really ridiculous, okay? 30 days notice before the time was taken. That's not how getting sick works. That should not be acceptable. You get sick, you should be able to just go. You can't time your sick. You're like, hey boss, I'm going to be sick in 30 days? That's a vacation day. That's how vacation days work. It's ridiculous, okay? Super ridiculous. Now, 4 transportation unions, comprising of nearly 100,000 rail workers, say the deal is unfair and threatened a national strike unless the agreement is broadened. Leaders of the railroad union that have voted not to ratify the tentative labor deal tell CNBC that as the Senate moves closer to a vote, senators need to realize this is a humanitarian issue. And it is. And their members will not forget who supported them, which they shouldn't. The 3 unions, the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen, or BRS, Smart TD, and Brotherhood of Maintenance Way Employees Division. Sorry, let me read that. Brotherhood of Maintenance Way Employees Division represent more than half of all railroad labor. Quote, our membership is going to support whoever stands with them, said Tony Cardwell, president of the Brotherhood of Maintenance Way Employees Division. It's looking like Democrats are standing with our members and making sure that our members get sick leave. If that's the case, we will stand behind them. If Republicans are bold enough to step out and stand with labor, stand with the blue-collar workers, and vote with our members, then it's likely that they can gain voters as well, which should be obvious, right? People are more likely to support people that support them, and I mean, let's be honest, like a lot of union members are probably pretty socially conservative. So why wouldn't they turn some of these votes and over to the Republicans? Some of them probably already vote Republican. I mean, if we're going to be honest, right? Like labor unions are not like a lock. Democrats don't have a lock on labor unions. They have somewhat, I guess, a lock on like union leadership to a degree, but not the rank and file. And it depends on the union as well. Some unions are more likely to be Republican leaning than others. It's just the nature of the game. Now, for their part, on Wednesday, the House passed the tentative rail labor agreement, an additional legislation to add 7 paid sick days, which has been one of the most important issues to rail workers in the breakdown of negotiations with freight rail companies. All 3 union presidents say they understand why President Biden had to push Congress to pass the tentative agreement. And this is like, everybody that's paid attention to this knows why, okay? So railways are still used in the United States to transport a lot, if not most, goods and services across the country. This includes things like gas, coal, things to make raw materials to make goods, I should say. And it goes all over the country. And it includes things like Christmas presents. I mean, honestly, like everything gets transported by rail to some degree, right? And if you stop the railroad from functioning, it's going to seize up the entire supply chain in the United States. Railroads make up a significant part of that supply chain, moving heavy equipment, goods, finished goods, unfinished goods, etc. And so if they striked right during Christmas, it will cause prices to go up on like almost everything. And when inflation's already an issue, putting a monkey wrench into the supply chain is just going to make things worse. And it will hurt poorer people more. So it is a valid concern of what the optics of this are and how the country actually functions. Say what you want about Biden, he is a political animal, and he will go more or less where the political winds kind of take him. And this is one of the things I was worried about. But before I get into it, let me go ahead and say this. Caldwell said, though, quote, "We hope that he stands by us on sick pay and that he's pushing the Senate to vote for the sick leave proposal that's on the floor." That part failed. Because, of course it did. Anything that passes in the Senate basically has to get at least a functory 60 votes. Okay? And if 60 votes aren't there to get it, then chances are a lot of things aren't going to pass. Some things might pass, like where they're like, hey, we're going to vote to let this go to debate, but we're going to still vote against it in order to, like, I don't know, support the base to some degree or like make some other deal or what have you. Some of those things might happen. We'll talk about one of those in a minute. But for most things like this, especially when it comes to workers' rights, they're not going to Republicans aren't going to break rank to vote for it. Or just not, or at least not enough of them are to vote for it. The Senate this afternoon passed the without sick leave 80-15. So the sick leave was not included. And one of the things I was worried about here, and this is an optics argument, and I'm going to eat crow because I wasn't aware. I thought that this was still a thing that most people did not have. And so, sorry to the two people I've been arguing with over the last 2 days. My worry had poofed. It's no longer a worry here, okay? And that worry was the fact that I had thought that most people in the United States didn't get paid sick leave still. Apparently, though, that has not been the case for a year. So, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, paid sick leave was available to 79% of civilians as of March of 2021. You can see it here. Among wage categories, access to paid sick leave ranged from 95% of workers whose average hourly wage placed them in the top 10% of civilians to 35% of those in the bottom 10% of all civilian workers. So there is this massive gap between how much money a person makes and their ability to take sick leave. However, again, 79% of all civilian workers get some form of paid sick leave. So the optics here, the optics I was worried about, that people didn't get sick leave, I was wrong. I was just wrong. I thought I was uninformed, and I apologize, because that was my only concern about this, and why I was like willing to give Biden any sort of, not even Biden, like Democrats, any sort of like leeway on this, because I was worried that people would see the fact that they're fighting for sick days and be against it because they didn't have sick days themselves. And that was just wrong. It was just wrong. Now, I'm still concerned who would get blamed for it. And I don't think it's necessarily a good political move to have stopped this and just let the strike happen. I'd still believe those things, but that issue there, no longer a concern. And I think everybody should, especially knowing this, hold the railroad, not employers, owners, the business owners, accountable for this. Because what is essentially happening here is that the way that the railroads are ran is that they do this staggered, they do a kind of basically a staggered shift thing, where every person that works on the rail yard has to basically work between 60 and 70 hours a week, and they only get like 1 or 2 days off a week. So that, or they might get a little bit more like days off, but they're still working that 60 to 70 hours. And if they are sick, they get actually penalized for it because they've ran such a skeleton crew with the staffing that they haven't hired people to work these jobs, that if a person is actually sick or off work for whatever reason, and they will less likely to have a backup for that person, and it will slow the entire chain down and actually impact profits and the ability to deliver goods on time. But that is a management problem, not a worker one. I'm sure you've seen this a lot lately, right? You go into a restaurant and there's like 2 people working there, and you're like, why isn't anybody here? Why am I waiting 40 minutes to get my food? Why do you only have 1 person in the back cooking? Like, what's going on? And it's too, there, people will say, oh, we can't get anybody to work here or what have you. That might be true to some extent and some of the time, but no, they're trying to get as much out of their current workers as possible to make up for losses that they experienced during the pandemic. Railroads operators are no different. It's being done across the entire country in pretty much every single sector of the economy. You're seeing the trimming of workers from tech industry now too, right? Trying to get more with less. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on. And it's really unconscionable, to be honest with you, that they wouldn't be given, even 2, like 3 sick, like they're giving 3 sick days, but they have to plan it. Come on, man. Now, one thing I will say is that there has been a trend in tech, at least, to not give any paid sick days, but to give more vacation days. And I think that's a good trade-off, to be honest with you. Because let's be real, a lot of people will call off sick. If they have sick days, they have to use or lose, right? And because it's the benefit, right? So that's a good trade-off. I think if that was the case, if they're like, okay, we're going to give you like, I don't know, whatever, 25 days off a year, use them as you see fit. You can use it to be call off sick. Like, I don't think that the unions would be against that. But at the same time, it's just like, just give people time off when they're sick. Like, why is this a issue? You're actually forcing people to choose to work sick and still to make their pay, and endangering everybody that they're working with. Why? There's really no need for it. But I think that concludes this segment of the cast. Because we have other stuff we have to talk about, everybody. We have other stuff we have to talk about. So, let's talk about some things more happening in the Senate. So, the Senate earlier this week passed the Respect for Marriage Act. It was actually passed yesterday with a bipartisan vote. Curious. The bill passed the Senate with all Democrats and 12 Republicans voting yes. The legislation formally repeals the Defense of Marriage Act, otherwise known as DOMA. It doesn't force any state to allow same-sex couples to marry, though. But what it does do is that it requires states to recognize all marriages that were held legal where they were performed and protect current same-sex unions if the court's 2015 Oberfell versus Hodge decisions were to be overturned. It's simple contract law. Very simple contract law. It's full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. And what it basically says is that most contracts held or completed in another state should be respected by, doesn't have to, should be respected by the other states. And this is saying, hey, you have to. You have to follow this. You have to respect these things. Now, that's a stunning bipartisan endorsement and evidence of societal change as well, after years of bitter divisiveness on this particular issue. The bill would also protect interracial marriages by requiring states to recognize legal marriages regardless of sex, race, ethnicity, or national origin. The bipartisan legislation to protect same-sex marriages is an extraordinary sign of a shifting national politics on this issue. And it's a measure of relief for the hundreds of thousands of same-sex couples who have married since the Supreme Court's 2015 Obergefell decision that legalized gay marriage nationwide. The growing GOP support for the issue is a sharp contrast from even a decade ago, where many Republicans vocally opposed same-sex marriages. Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat who is the first openly gay senator, has been working on gay rights issues for almost 4 decades. Baldwin said that this month that the newfound openness from many Republicans on the subject reminds her, quote, of the arc of the LGBTQ movement to begin with in the early days when people weren't out and people knew gay people by myths and stereotypes. I'm going to read that again. It reminds her of, quote, of the arc of the LGBTQ movement to begin with in the early days when people weren't out and people knew gay people by myths and stereotypes. Adding only. Baldwin, the lead Senate negotiator on the legislation, said that as more individuals and families become visible, hearts and minds have changed. End quote. And slowly, laws have followed, she said. It is history. And that is very true. It's very true. So 12 Republicans voted for it. 12 out of 50. So it's still an issue. We shouldn't downplay the fact that it's still an issue. But it passed. And that is a good thing. And it should remain law. All right. So we're going to turn over now to some SCOTUS updates. And first off, some bribery or corruption? Let's go over to SCOTUS blog on TikTok for an overview of a case involving bribery, lobbying, and potential corruption.
The Supreme Court is back at it for their December sitting. Let's go. When a public official accepts money to convince the government to do something, we call him a crook. When a private citizen accepts money to convince the government to do something, we call him a lobbyist. That's the opening line of Joe Percoco's brief in a case before the Supreme Court this week. Joe Percoco is a former top aide to Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York. Percoco was convicted under federal bribery laws for taking about $35,000 from a real estate developer helping push a deal through. But the key here is that Percoco took that money during an 8-month period after he left the governor's office and before he joined it again. So he
Ooh, okay. I'm going to take this money. I'm going to disappear for 8 months, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to lobby hard for you. Seems to me like he was a government official still, people. And this was just a fancy way to try to avoid the law.
He was a private citizen. The question here is, how far do federal bribery laws extend? They obviously cover public officials and public employees. We don't want any quid pro quos. But what about former aides on a short break out of government service, like Percoco, or lobbyists, or donors, or family members of public officials? Could they get charged under federal bribery laws? It sounds like the justices weren't willing to extend federal bribery laws quite that far. But it did raise...
I wonder why. For people that don't know, Clarence Thomas's wife works as a lobbyist, essentially. So of course they're not willing to extend it that far. Everybody likes getting paid, right?
There's a lot of questions, like what if a public employee resigns really quick so that he can take a bribe and then comes back to his job? That was Justice Kagan's hypothetical. Or suppose there's...
I mean, that's basically what happened, though. 8 months is nothing.
A really popular governor who can't run for re-election, but his spouse runs and wins. Everyone knows he's the one really pulling the strings, but the spouse is the official. Could that person get charged under the statute for taking a bribe? That was Justice Alito's hypothetical. Again, the justices were quite skeptical of Prococo's conviction and will likely get a decision by the end of the term, late June, early July.
Yeah, this is weird, man. Like, how are we going to have any laws about corruption and not see stuff like this for what it is, which is corruption, trying to get around the laws that we have against public officials taking money from people in the form of a bribe in order to do law? It's almost like a lot of people just want open bribery to happen again because that's just how things work. It really seems that way to me. The issue of justices' wives or spouses aside, right? We have this going on everywhere in the United States government to a degree, right? The whole STOP Act, the stop trading on knowledge, stock act, stop trading on congressional knowledge. That's what it's called. Act, right? And that is done because are you going to not talk to your spouse about the things that you know in Congress that you're seeing come through the pipeline of all the secret intelligence briefings you have, or all the other things you're privy to, all the lobbyists you talk to, all the deals that you have to sign off on, the impending changes to anything that deals with the federal government? No, of course not. Like, that's absurd. You talk to your spouse, your significant other, your child, your close relatives about what you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Everybody does that. Even people with top security clearances do that. It's gotten people with top security clearances hammed up because they got married a little too quick, and it turns out they married a spy. Like, this happens. This is just human nature, right? So why would you let them, trade on their things or lobby the government while being married to you, or all these other things? Like, why have this? It can be stopped, and it should be stopped. I've said in the past that one of the, if not the most important, one of the most important functions of government is to increase social trust within society. Social trust theory is this broad theory about how we learn to, in the groups of people that we live with, in quote unquote a society. We live in a society, right? How we trust and operate and move through that, and what kind of things engender trust between people. For long story short wise. And when government does things that breaks down trust within the government, it breaks down trust within society at large. And you're seeing it play out right now. Now, it can be stoked by irrational fears about things that are being done by, said by pundits, everyone's a Fed kind of bullshit, right? But when things like this happen, when corruption is obvious to people, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anyone any good. It breaks down trust in institutions. It makes you trust your neighbor less. It makes you more insular, and it causes social breakdown. And the Supreme Court doesn't seem to know any of this right now. It is. And Chargeback, I just got your message. We're gonna put that one up on screen. That's a good one. So Changebox says, quote, I think a lot of actions our leaders are taking is to try to restore confidence, but are accomplishing the opposite. True. It's probably is true. I agree. I can agree with that. Like, it does take a lot of work to do this. But like, saying, okay, for example, one of the things that I would say, for example, is the whole mail-in ballot thing. A lot of politicians are saying that mail-in ballots are ripe for corruption. by simply repeating that over and over again, it doesn't matter if it is or not, if it actually happens. You're convincing people that it does. And that breaks down trust in the election process. And if you don't have a trust in the election process, are you going to trust anything that happens in government? No, it's not. Yeah, like it's not good. So continuing on, he says, we're going to put this up here on the screen. So one of the nicest people that Changebox knows in Florida posted one day, great, now I have to worry my neighbor is a terrorist because they had a Trump sign. This is a complete and total loss of trust. Oh, fudge, my internet's clear. Okay. No Changebox, your internet's not super far behind. The comments coming through, because I'm using Restream.io chat, is delayed because I no longer pay for it. So it's about a 15-second delay on me getting your messages. But yeah. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, when partisanship increases to the degree that it does too, it also breaks down social trust, and it's one of the things that we have to rectify. We have to. It's a shame that this is continuing, and there's a lot of stuff that can be done to help it, but a lot of stuff is just making it worse, really making it worse. Oof. Okay, we got more stuff to cover for SCOTUS, though. So we're going to talk about Trump's taxes finally making it to Congress. So last week, the SCOTUS rejected former President Donald Trump's ongoing battle to prevent his income taxes from being turned over to Congress. According to reporting from the week, Trump had initially petitioned the High Court in October to step in and prevent the IRS from handing over 6 years of tax records to the House Ways and Means Committee, after an appeals court determined that Congress could have access to the documents. Excuse me. As attorneys for the government pointed out in their statement to the court, any delay would, quote, have leave the committee and Congress as a whole little or no time to complete their investigative work during this congressional session, which is quickly approaching its end. There were no noted dissensions from the Supreme Court justices. Now, they don't have to, in these like shadow docket things, they don't have to actually express a dissent. This doesn't mean it was a unanimous ruling by the court, but it does mean that they didn't want to make the dissent public. So they didn't do dissent. They just like, you lost Trump, sorry for you. Peace, dude. So the Ways and Means Committee has wanted the tax documents from both Trump and 8 of his business entities to, quote, determine whether Trump and his companies are complying with tax laws and to oversee whether the IRS audit of the former president was conducted fully and appropriately, as CBS News had summarized. Which is fair. Like, this is something that should just be, you're in government. You're working for the people. You should be transparent. I'm not saying that every single person in the country needs to know your line by line item that you do. Like, I'm not asking for people to give up their total privacy here. Okay. But if you work for the government, you should be open about your business dealings, especially when you're trying to use those business dealings and the fact that you're giving away your check every month as a means to engender goodwill, that you're working for the American people. Because we don't know. We don't know what kind of corruption might have been happening. We don't know if all the rules about the emoluments clause were being followed. We don't know. And these are things that just should be publicly known. Again, I'm not saying a line by line item needs to be turned over to every single U.S. citizen. A simple, we've looked at his taxes are good, boom. But that should come from Congress, not a appointed person in the executive that is there because Trump appointed, or because the president or somebody else appointed them. Really shouldn't be done that way. We gotta continue on though. Let's see. What do I want to cover? What do I want to cover right now? Well, we go ahead and do some election roundup here, because there's still some outstanding elections and they're going to be important to talk about. So, what's happening? So, after the chaos of the 2020 election that saw people all over the country angrily protesting that the election was somehow rigged or stolen, spoiler alert, it wasn't. Some American voters had been holding their breath as the votes were counted in the midterms. The media hyped that this election would be a practice run for election deniers in 2024. If that's what it was, the midterms were a practice run for officials and the courts, not for successful protests about the outcome of the election. Yes, there were Republican candidates that claimed... Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Dogs got excited for some reason. So yes, there were Republican candidates that claimed they would not accept the results if they lost. Yes, there were Republican candidates who pushed the big lie throughout their campaigns. But it didn't take long to figure out that the voters pushed right back, delivering a shellacking to Republicans. There were no big Stop the Steal demonstrations, unless you count the dozen or so supporters of MAGA candidate Kari Lake, quote, reenacting the Battle of Jericho outside a building in Arizona, marching around in a circle and yelling through a megaphone. Nearly every one of Trump's candidates who embraced and pushed the big lie lost. The ones who ran for the Secretary of State offices all lost. Doug Mastriano campaigned on overturning the 2020 election and lost the governor's race in Pennsylvania to Democrat Josh Shapiro. It took him 5 days after the race was called for Shapiro, but Mastriano conceded without fanfare. The elections board in Lewins County, Pennsylvania, initially refused to certify their vote canvass yesterday, after being sued for missing a state deadline earlier this week. Board members on Monday had voted to defy the state certification deadline in a 2-2 vote, with one abstention after polling places in the county experienced paper shortages on election day. But after progressive elections from the Ellis Law Group sued the county on behalf of the Democratic representative Matt Cartwright on Tuesday, the Democratic member who previously abstained voted to certify at Wednesday's meeting, paving the way for passage. As an aside, the Ellis Law Group is headed by Mark Ellis, a Democracy docket. As an aside, the Ellis Law Group is headed by Mark Ellis of Democracy Docket and has handled hundreds of elections-related lawsuits over the last several years. Arizona, where the 2020 election never seemed to end, still faces challenges today. Maricopa County elected officials met to approve the midterm elections results on Monday, where they were heckled, called traitors, and told that their handling of the voting justified a violent revolution. Insane stuff. Just outright batshit. Over the top. Crying over spilled milk, trying to take your ball and go home. But by a ball, we mean someone's head here. Like, this should not be accepted by anyone. If you are friends with a person that says, we lost, therefore they cheated, and you should die, you probably shouldn't be friends with that person anymore. We don't mince words here. I was not happy that Trump won. Was not at all. I will be full up and honest about that. Trump winning to me was a grave injustice. But I didn't say that the election was stolen. I didn't say that Antifa should be out there rioting in the streets and burning buildings and stuff. I did not participate in that shit. And neither should you. And you shouldn't tolerate people that are. Continuing on though, sheriff's deputies stood ground Sheriff's deputies stood their ground over what used to be a humdrum procedural move. After listening to more than 24 people accuse them of election wrongs, the Board of Supervisors voted to certify the election. Now, all but one county in Arizona has certified their elections. The deadline for doing so, though, was this past Monday. As of the completion of this copy late this afternoon, Cochise County, a Republican stronghold, refused to certify. And why are they refusing to certify? Because they don't agree with the election results in other counties. It's not how this works. That is not how this works. You can't just say, oh, I'm not going to certify my people's votes, the people that are in my county, because I don't trust your county to do its job. This is asinine. Fully, it's just not acceptable. It really isn't. And because of that, in response, current Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who is also governor-elect after beating Kari Lake by 17,000 votes, filed suit against Cochise County. Earlier today, an Arizona state judge ordered Cochise County officials to certify their local midterm elections results after they missed the state's legal deadline and put more than 47,000 people's votes at risk. Again, the certifications process in Arizona is a default you can't mess with it process. That's why they're being sued, and that's why they're losing, and that's why the judge is saying, hey, you can't do this. They're not allowed to not certify. Their role as election officials is to ensure that the election happens. They determine where polling places are placed, determine what kind of voting machines are used or what have you, ensuring that they're staffed properly, and contingencies are made in order to have a smooth election. They don't get to say, we don't certify this election. They don't. If there's votes outstanding, they'd be like, hey, we have votes outstanding. We have to count these votes. That they can do that, but that's not refusing to certify. That's saying we have still votes to count. We still have to do it. Right now, they're just refusing to do their job. And they don't legally have the authority to do so. Now, ruling from the bench at a court hearing, Pima County Superior Court Judge Casey McGinley ordered the county's Board of Supervisors to meet and make the results official by 5 p.m. Mountain Time. There's some speculation that if the county officials still refuse to certify, the state will certify the election without including Cochise County's votes, which would, in theory, mean that their House seat would revert to the Democratic candidate instead of the Republican who won that election. That is ridiculous. They are so ass mad about the fact that they are lost this election, fair and square, that they are going to risk getting another Democrat in. That's ridiculous. Okay. So, breaking news, according to our good friend, copywriter, producer, Nikki, says that as of this afternoon, so officials in rural Cochise County, Arizona on Thursday certified the results of the county's midterm elections, ending a high-stakes confrontation with state officials over the county's failure to sign off on elections results by the legal deadline. The 2-0 vote came shortly after a judge ordered the county's 3-member board of supervisors to certify the results by 5 p.m. local time, Mountain Time. Breaking news happened while we were reading from the copy, while we were doing our live show. That's why we do this. It's good stuff. So thanks, Nikki, for dropping that in chat. So there you have it. It's been certified. Yay! Page turned and the Yoshis grew happier. Democracy lives another day. Fuckery has been stopped. So yes. So that's good. That's good. So they're crying, diaper-filled babies didn't get their way. And the judge put the smack on them. And that's good for everybody. Now, however, Arizona wasn't the only race still up in the air. We still have the Colorado race for current Representative Lauren Boebert, whose race will enter a recount, despite her Democratic opponent having already conceded, trailing Boebert by 550 votes. Now, the reason that this is going into a recount is that it's triggering the automatic recounting in Colorado law. It's within the threshold to trigger an automatic recount. So they're going through and they're going to recount the votes as required by Colorado law. But the chances of this overturning, not overturning, that's not the right word, of changing the outcome of the election, finding votes or seeing, hey, this vote was counted wrong, whatever, it's not likely. Generally speaking, what happens during a recount is that the person that won gets more votes. Everybody gets more votes, but the person that won gets more votes and still is the winner. It's rarely ever a misfiring of anything where they're like, oh, these votes were incorrectly counted by our machine because the dot was over to the left too much or what have you, right? So it rarely ever happens. So it's still more than likely going to be that Lauren Boebert will still represent that district. However, it just goes to show that this was a very tight election and one that she should have won by like double digits. I know that a lot of people that are local to her congressional district don't like her or have grown to dislike her more over the last 2 years, but still, like, this was an area that went to Trump overwhelmingly, and now she's hanging on by a thread. You think she'll change and do anything? Not at all. No. You don't win. You don't learn lessons from winning, people. You learn lessons from losing. And she still won. So don't expect any change in her disposition. Additionally, though, the California seat also remains open, waiting for an official call. While some media pundits continue to insist that the issues in the two small counties out of the whole of the United States spells doom for elections in 2024, others are saying that this is how the big lie dies. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Awoo. That concludes that segment. And that was a good segment. I like that. That was good. Well, we're going to clip that one. That one's good stuff. Good stuff. All right. All right, so we got time. So this is a little interesting a story. So we're going to talk about Berkman and Wohl pleading guilty. So you might remember these two right-wing conspiracy theorists from their voter suppression campaign in the run-up to the 2020 election. The Washington Post reported today that in the summer of 2020, tens of thousands of people across 5 states received robocalls urging them to not vote by mail. The calls falsely warned that the personal information of those who registered to vote by mail would be shared with police, credit card companies, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. A lot of right-wing fear-mongering tactics that kind of can sometimes work on other people. You don't want your information going to the police, do you? Police know where people live. They have a database. What? Okay, whatever. Like, how do they expect this to work? In order to vote, you have to have an address registered with the state. The police have already got your address, dude. Like, it's on your ID. What are you doing? Credit card companies, that I can understand. Everybody's trying to dodge bills every once in a while. Lots of people try to dodge bills every once in a while, right? Get overwhelmed with credit card debt. Sometimes you be like, oh no, I don't want the credit card companies to find me. I'm gonna pay it. I just can't pay it right now, right? But really? The credit card companies can get that information. Like, you can't just drop off the face of the map, dude. Anyways, point is though, that they tried to use this fear-mongering to make it so people wouldn't vote. Not only that, they told voters to not be. Voters were told not to be, quote, finessed into giving your private information to the man. My God. Like, this isn't the 80s anymore, man. Like, yeah, the man's trying to keep us all down and shit, but people don't talk like that anymore. When's the last, like, seriously, when's the last time have you heard somebody like, man, the man's just trying to keep me down? I don't know. I don't even think I don't know a person in their 50s that has used that phrase in a long time. That's wild. Wild. Bizarre. Well, Ohio prosecutors in October of 2020 charged right-wing operatives Jack Berkman and Jacob Wall with telecommunications fraud in connection with this scheme, and 2 years later, the two men have now pled guilty. Berkman and Wall were charged after a wave of roughly 85,000 robocalls targeted voters in Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois in 2020. Berkman, 56, and Wall, 24, staged several irreverent stunts to add to the stream of disinformation that bombarded Americans in the lead up to the 2020 presidential election. In addition to the robocalls, the pair called a news conference promising to produce a sexual assault accuser against Special Counsel Robert Mueller III, though the alleged accuser never showed up. They allegedly recruited young Republican men to make false sexual assault claims against then presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg. So we got lying about all the things. So the reason why they don't want to believe survivors is because they're trying to make fake survivors. It's always fucking projection. I swear to God. There's some things that you just should never lie about, and that these are two of them. Not, well, one of them. It's the same accusation. I really hope they go to prison. They pled guilty, so they might not go to prison. But I really hope they go to prison. They need to be in prison. This is ridiculous. Not only that, they staged a fake FBI raid on Berkman's Arlington, Virginia home that briefly fooled the Washington Post. They were ordered by a judge on Tuesday to spend 500 hours registering voters in low-income neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. after pleading guilty to telecommunications fraud. They're going to put these people in charge of registering voters. They're not going to do it. How is this punishment? They're going to walk around and not do shit. Judge John Stewart Law in Ohio's Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court also sentenced Berkman and Wall to 2 years of probation, fines of $2,500 each, and electronic monitoring from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. for 6 months. This is nothing. This is a slap on the wrist. People wonder why trust is breaking down. Why people feel emboldened to do this shit. The 500 hours registering voters in low-income neighborhoods, they're not going to do that. They're going to walk around and pretend that they're doing it. They'll get like the bare minimum to look like they're trying. Or they'll fake it. You can easily fake. Well, I mean, okay. By fake it, I mean they'll maybe pay people off to like actually register or something. Get signatures or whatever. $2,500 cash and monitoring, that's nothing, dude. However, though, there are still cases pending against Berkman and Wall in Michigan and New York. Berkman and Wall may also face a historic $5 million fine from the Federal Communications Commissions for making robocalls to cell phones without people's consent. Hopefully New York or Michigan does a harsher penalty, because this is sad. I don't like this. I hope they get prison. I hope they have to spend at least jail at least. The difference between jail and prisons that shorter time people spend time in jail, longer term fines and imprisonment go to prison. So I hope that they serve some time behind bars, because this is nothing. Like they clearly made enough. They were clearly paid to do these things. The fines are just going to be paid by somebody else, right? But good work. I mean, I know it didn't work, but good work doing it for us, right? They're just going to get paid for it. It's a joke. All right. We got more news to cover. And we're going to cover the thing that everybody's already talking about. Of course, we're going to talk about Kanye West. Or Ye. I think it's just Ye, right? Ye West? Is he still has his last name? I don't know. Ye. Whatever. All right. This one is this is a doozy. I know everybody's already heard about this. Everybody's already seen a lot of it. I don't care. We're going to cover it because it's news, and that is what we do here. Okay? Also, it's interesting that it seems to be an actual political strategy on behalf of people. So we're going to talk about it, all right? So, according to the Washington Post, former President Donald Trump's refusal to apologize for or disavow the outspoken anti-Semitism he dined with last week is setting him increasingly at odds with leaders of his own party. His sharing a meal with Ye and far-right extremist, white nationalist, Holocaust-denying, misogynistic Nick Fuentes, but better not call him a Nazi, is the first test of the political endurance since launching his third run for the White House. The situation is also testing how Republicans will handle the party's extreme fringe in the months ahead after years of racist, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic speech flooding into the political bloodstream during the Trump era. This isn't to say all Republicans are racist. Not saying that. But it is to say that this is becoming more and more mainstream, which is downright terrifying. Trump has been taken aback by the backlash and maintained that the controversy over the Mar-a-Lago dinner would blow over, according to advisors who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss confidential conversations. Quote, "I think it's dying down," they recalled Trump saying. Already, they think he's dying down. Well, it could if he could shut the fuck up. But we all know that he won't, so it's going to keep going. Now, but the wave of denunciations only intensified as lawmakers returned to Washington from the Thanksgiving holiday, breaking a well-worn pattern of dodging or shrugging off Trump's controversies during much of his presidency, possibly ushering in a new phase of more vocal criticism of him. And again, they already have a new horse to back in this fight, Ron DeSantis. America's governor, everybody, or at least that's what Republicans are calling him. So they're some of them are gonna back away from Trump until the primary starts, and 30% of the 30 to 40% of the primary voters still back Trump. It's going to be interesting to see. That's why we're talking about it. That's why it's happening. Of those criticize him, rebukes from Chris Christie and others likely 2024. Apparently, Chris Christie's probably going to run for president, I guess, again. Jeez. Okay. So rebukes from Chris Christie and other likely 2024 challengers began to circulate, including an exceptionally rare criticism from Trump's own former vice president. Quote, "I think he should apologize for it, and he should denounce those individuals and their hateful rhetoric without qualification," Mike Pence said in an interview with News Nation that aired on Monday. Mike Pence is one of those people that have been running for president their entire life. And of course he's going to be running again, because somehow he thinks he can weld the Trumpian and evangelical base back together under his tutelage. I don't see it, everybody. Mike Pence has got the charisma of a wet noodle. He's about as interesting as a saltine cracker. What's another one? I don't know. But he doesn't have it. He's a piece of cardboard, is what I'm saying. If you took a cardboard cutout of Mike Pence and sat it right next to Mike Pence and had them both talking, the cardboard from a microphone and Mike Pence in real life, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. That's what I'm saying here. So the fact that Mike Pence thinks he can run for president and do well is really cope, honestly. Huge amounts of it. It's borderline delusional. Borderline. And by everybody jumping into the race that seems to want to jump into the race, we got Mike Pence for sure. It looks like DeSantis for sure. It looks like who's the governor? West Virginia. Who's the governor? Ralph. No. Hold on. We're gonna get him. Virginia governor Youngkin. Youngkin's probably running. Northam. Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Northam's probably running. Georgia governor. Pretty sure that's Northam. I'm just making sure for my own peace of mind. Governor Brian Kemp. That's who I was thinking of, not Northam. Oh, you're saying other purpose. Yeah, Northam, Nikki Haley. Yeah. Gotcha. So let's go down the list again. Mike Pence, Northam, Nikki Haley, DeSantis, Brian Kemp, freaking Youngkin, maybe. He hasn't put out his feelers out there too much. Like all these people are running for president because they think they can weld Trump's base together with them. I don't see it. And we're going to talk about why this is probably part of Trump's political strategy. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk more. Let's continue on. So, up to the day of the dinner, multiple advisors tried to convince Trump to cancel it. Hey, some people could see the train wreck about to happen. They warned him, but Trump gonna Trump. You can't tell me what to do. I do what I want. Okay, that's what Trump is. His ego is far too big to have anybody tell him what to do. He's another man that needed to have somebody. No, not gonna go with that one because people have told him no, and he didn't. Yeah, okay. Anyways, continuing on though, advisors showed Trump some of Yee's comments in the efforts to talk him out of the dinner. Advisors had said Yee has lost business deals and has been widely condemned for explicitly anti-Semitic tweets and diatribes. But Trump recalled one advisor saying wasn't having any of it. Trump wasn't having any of it. Former president was focused on Yee's history of praising him because that's all that matters to this guy. Trump is in it for Trump and Trump alone. He doesn't care about anything else. Anybody that thinks he cares about the American people are fooling themselves. Probably because they got fooled by Trump. Like, of course, Trump has always said, he's been a nice guy to me. He's been a nice guy. Oh. Jesus. But Yee visited Trump at the White House anyways, or at the White House in 2018, and frequently praised his presidency. Trump has also resisted efforts in recent days to persuade him to make a statement denouncing Fuentes and Yee. His latest remarks addressing the controversy, reported Tuesday on the Fox News website, emphasized his previous claim that he did not know who Fuentes was. I never heard of him. I have no idea what his views were, and they weren't expressed at the table in our very quick dinner, or it wouldn't have been accepted. Because that's how you deflect in modern days. You just say, I didn't know who this person was. I just let him come to dinner. Former president, the United States just lets anybody that wants to give him a little bit of an ego boost, a little bit of a stroke, does that. And you know what? Fuentes says Trump praised him. Saw that the other day. Nick Fuentes. You know what? I don't have the video ready. I'm not going to bother looking for it. But Fuentes Fuentes said on his stupid freaking program that Trump said he was a smart guy and he was going places, basically. And you could just see on his face the amount of admiration and ego boost and awe that was just there, knowing that Trump liked him to even the modicum of degree. So who are we going to believe? A habitual liar or Nazi? I don't know. Pick your poison. There's no reason to disbelieve that Trump said that Fuentes was like a nice guy or smart or whatever, because he's there praising Trump. And like anybody that praises Trump is a good guy. Remember, Yee praised Trump. Never. He's always been nice to me. That's always how it is. When you have a person that is driven by just their ego, anything that you say nice about them is just going to be like, yeah, the guy's smart, smartest man, one of the smartest people I know. He likes me and thinks I'm smart, so he must be smart too. 100% believe it happened. Now, this isn't the only thing that Yee has done this week. He also was on Alex Jones today. He was on Alex Jones today. He was on, was it yesterday or the day before? He was on Tim Pool's show. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, he's just going everywhere. They're on a tour. Yee, Maya Yiannopoulos, Nick Fuentes. They're doing a circuit. They're the what is it? The foxes are in the hen house, so to speak. Their 4chan has come into their own here. Well, let's talk about it, okay? So according to a report today from The Week, Yee has taken his string of anti-Semitic comments to the next level by going on far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and praising Adolf Hitler. The rapper, formerly known as Kanye West, appeared on Alex Jones' InfoWars Thursday alongside Nick Fuentes, fresh off of their dinner with Donald Trump and their interview with Tim Pool. They've discussed the controversy over Yee's repeated anti-Semitic comments, with Jones defending the rapper by saying, "You're not Hitler, you're not a Nazi, you don't deserve to be called that and demonized." Despite this defense, Yee openly stated, quote, he likes Hitler. We're going to go over to that because you have to see this. You haven't seen this. My God. Okay. So that's Kanye. That's Yee in a hood, protecting his face from the world for some reason again. That's Nick Fuentes over here on the right, and that's Alex Jones for people who don't know. We're gonna listen to this real quick.
Of it. And now people are
okay, hold on. We're gonna turn this up a little bit because it's muffled because he's speaking through a freaking GIMP mask.
like, wait a second.
Okay. We're gonna start this over. Hold on. There we go.
Of it. And now people are like, wait a second, the so-called crime doesn't deserve the punishment. What did I thought?
That's right. You're not Hitler. You're not a Nazi. You don't deserve to be called that and demonized.
Well, I see good things about Hitler also. I love everyone, and Jewish people are not going to tell me you can love us and you can love what we're doing to you.
What? Was that really on the InfoWars? Was that scene from American History X really on InfoWars? Was that added? I hope there's no way. Holy crap. So they knew that Kanye was going to say some dumb shit. Holy crap. If that was really on the InfoWars, I have not watched the full InfoWars segment. I probably won't watch the full one, to be honest with you. I don't like giving people my click money, okay? But they knew. They knew. This is the curb stomping scene from American History X. That is freaking Edward Norton's character about to curb stomp a black guy. The Nazi about to curb stomp this black guy. And they played that while Kanye was speaking. Like, that face, this face right here, that's what everybody is doing. Like, no, don't do it. Don't say it, right? Oh, like, I lost the camera there for a second. But don't do it. Don't say it, right? That's everybody's face. This right here. This right here. Holy crap, they knew he was gonna, they knew. God, wow. Wow, I am floored. Jesus. But let's continue on. Let's continue on.
You know, us, and you can love what we're doing to you with the contracts, and you can love what we're pushing with the pornography. But this guy that invented highways, invented the very microphone that I use as a musician, you can't say out loud that this person ever did anything good. And I'm done with that. I'm done with the classifications. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table.
No, Yee. You don't have to give it to Hitler. You really don't. Everyone has something of value. Sure, but no, some people don't. Their bad outweighs their good. Never have to give it to anybody.
Especially Hitler. How about that one?
Christ.
Ari Emanuel, how you like that one? Hey, Ron, you gonna do anything to fix Chicago?
Wow. You gonna do any... Jeez. Wow. That's insane. Like, I knew it was bad because I saw the mask. Like, I when I saw the mask, I knew some insane freaking babblings of a person that needs help, honestly. But if people refuse help, you can't give it to them, right? Jeez, dude. No. And okay, this isn't the first time he's done this. These comments actually line up with previous reporting that Yee has a history of praising Hitler and Nazis. Blittlers, you hate to see it. Jesus. So CNN reported in October that the rapper has an obsession with Hitler and even wanted to name an album after him. And NBC News reported he had paid a settlement to a former employee who witnessed, quote, more than one incident in which Yee praised Hitler or Nazis in business meetings. Former TMZ staffer Von Leuthen also alleged that during a visit to the TMZ offices in 2018, Yee said, quote, he loves Hitler and he loves Nazis. Yee also defended Nazis on InfoWars after Jones called them thugs who, quote, did a lot of really bad things. With the rapper shooting back, they did good things too. We're got to stop dissing Nazis all the time. Okay. So, one, and again, you never have to hand it to Hitler. Any person that's a genocidal maniac is really an evil abomination, a stain on the human existence. And you're just rubbing all that shit all over your body and bathing yourself in it anytime you give them praise at all. That's how bad these people are. Their evils get rubbed on you when you say anything positive about them. That's how this works. That's what happens when evil people exist and you praise evil people. You become, I won't say evil necessarily, but you get a lot of their shit on you. Rightfully so. 2, and this is a comment that I had from a good friend. A person that I've spoken to on this show before, that it seems like this might actually be political strategy from the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes in order to bring all of the 4chan evil people, essentially, into Trump's wing to prevent them from voting for other candidates in the primary. 4chan is coming into the political reality. They're leaving the internet. They're leaving their mom's basements. They're putting the fedora aside. They're putting the fedora aside. And they're coming out and they're actually getting involved in real life politics. They're no longer just engaged in meme warfare. They engaged in actual warfare, trying to get as many people onto their side as possible. And every time they're platformed, Nick Fuentes has grown. He's grown from being on Destiny's program. He's grown. He clearly grew sometimes on something from freaking not Alex Jones, from Tim Pool the other day. Because Tim Pool's chat was inundated with like, hey, give the guy a chance. Hey, he's actually saying some good things. You can't be all wrong, right? Granted, probably a lot of those people were Nick Fuentes fans. But he's growing because every time that they are exposed and are given a platform, it legitimizes their positions as being a position that should be within the Overton window, within the realm of respectable discourse. It happens. Ridicule can be used in order to, if you platform somebody like this. Not saying that you should, not saying that you shouldn't, saying if you do, okay? Ridicule can actually be an effective tool to dismiss their opinions as being unacceptable. But that's not what these people did. They gave them legitimacy. Tim Pool gave gave Mayo Landopoulos, gave Nick Fuentes legitimacy by having him on the program. And really the only reason that Tim Pool got really mad after that, because he was overly deferential to Yee. Overly deferential to him. He barely did any pushback. He's like, yo man, like you can't, like, you don't like it when people group all black people together for like things that other black people do that are bad, like murder or whatever. You don't like that. So why are you doing it to like Jews, bro? And Yee got up and walked out from that. And Tim Pool complained that he was being deferential, and Yee still walked out. Like, no. Say, oh, you know what? Honestly, the correct response to that would have been, one, harder pushback. Full stop. Like, it shouldn't have been minor. It should have been like, no, you don't say that shit. You don't say that shit because it's racist and it's wrong and you don't like it. Nobody likes it when it's done to them. Stop it. You're being a piece of shit. Like, that's what he should have said. Full stop. Something along those lines. I'm not going to say, police how people use language all the time, but it should have been more forceful. Okay? Like, that's what should have been done. But you shouldn't have been like, oh, I was deferential and he left. Oh my god. I'm so sad that he took his audience away from me. You don't do that, dude. So we got a comment in from Nikki here, on the fact that the American History X was playing. So I'm gonna put that on screen real quick. So, quote, for an unknown reason, the show was playing a particular violent scene from the movie American History X during a portion of their interview while Yee spoke. So that actually happened on air. That was not an edited clip at all. Unknown? I don't think it was unknown, dude. I think they knew he was about to say something really messed up, and they're like, dude, this is what Nazis want to do to you. This is what Hitler would have done to you. That's the explanation. That's the one that makes sense. Jeez. Wow. Freaking ridiculous. But again, okay, the other thing though, I need to stress this again. Trump is getting rightfully eviscerated from this by all comers, right? But the issue is that if these people actually come out and vote, because they are non-voters, they came out and voted in 2016. Some of them stayed home in 2020. Not all of them. Some of them did though, right? If they all come out and be like, oh, Trump is actually on our side, and they vote in the Republican primary, it is a good chance that Trump will win the primary again, especially if the Republicans make another mistake and don't coalesce around a more acceptable candidate to them, not to me. Like, I think I'll probably, I don't know if there is a Republican that is actually willing to run for the presidency again that I could put my support behind. Too many of them have been tainted again by cozying up to the shit that is Trump. They got the shit all over them. That's where we're going to end that segment at. Now we got to talk about economy and labor. We like to talk about this. This is how we end out our news show. So let's get into it. Okay. So according to reporting from the Associated Press, the U.S. economy grew at 2.9% annual rate from July through September, in a healthy upgrade from its initial estimate, despite high interest rates and chronic inflation. It marked the second of 3 estimates the Commerce Department will provide of economic expansion in the third quarter. In its initial estimate, the department had estimated the economy grew at 2.6% annual rate last quarter. Economists expect the economy to eke out a modest 1% annualized growth from October through December, according to a survey of forecasters conducted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Federal Chair Jerome Powell has stressed that the Fed will do all that it takes to curb the spikes in consumer prices, which shot up 7.7% in October from a year earlier. However, this is a slowdown from a year-over-year peak of 9.1% in June, but still significantly above the Fed's target of 2%. This means, though, that we are seeing disinflation. Disinflation is the slowdown of inflation. It's not deflation. Deflation is when prices come down. But disinflation over time ends up balancing out and prices stabilize, and you have the 2 whatever percentage rate. It just keeps going down. It doesn't, you don't see prices drop down, but you see prices start to ebb. So you see this kind of like a spike, and then you kind of see that going. I don't know how well you saw that. So you see a spike, right? And you kind of see off, but it's still going up. Right. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing disinflation, as we said. And again, I think the Fed's target rate should be around 3 to 4%, not 2%. I think 2% is a little too low, especially if you want to maintain a robust jobs market. That's just me, though. So federal policymakers, led by Chairman Jerome Powell, are still focused on elevated inflation levels and look to set to raise rates at the upcoming December 13th to 14th meeting by 50 basis points, which is what is expected, is what they said. They telegraphed it. Chances are they're going to stick to it. They're going to do 50 basis points this time, and possibly 225s or 150 and 125. So in the future. So we'll likely see this 50-point basis rise, which is curbing of their rates. It's a tapering off. Right? This is good news. It means that the economy is coming back into balance to a degree. And it means the Fed is actually sticking to what it says, which is good for markets and people anticipating future. Now, I still worry. Don't get me wrong. I still worry that we might ratchet interest rates into a recession with inflation, which is called stagflation, which is still a very big possibility, and everybody is expecting it to basically happen Q2 of next year. We'll see. It is still a high possibility, but it is possible. It is possible that a softish landing may be possible, which means that the economy will have a very slight recession and it will bounce back quickly. And this is, of course, according to Barclays. So meanwhile, another key official gauge of activity, known as gross domestic income, rose at a 0.3% rate in the third quarter after falling 0.8% in the prior period. It's a measure of the income generated and cost incurred from producing those goods and services. It's another angle, basically, to look at the overall economy. GDP is like you're kind of looking at it from the left. GDI is kind of looking at it from the right. It's trying to get different angles, up and down, like all around, right? That's how it's done. And the official recession calling people do basically an average of the two, a composite average of GDP and GDI. Where was I? Okay. Yep. So the average of these two findings, which I just said, which is the National Bureau of Economic Research Business Cycling Dating Committee, that is a group of people that call when a recession hits or not, has increased to 1.6% after falling in the first half of the year. So for Federal Reserve policymakers raising interest rates at the fastest pace in a generation, the overall growth picture is one they want to see, in line with or slightly below the economy's long-term trend, perhaps enough to slow inflation, but not yet signaling a recession. The underlying picture of growth proved similar to the preliminary releases. While the details showed resilient consumer spending and business investment, the biggest contributor to GDP was the volatile net exports category. Government spending also rose in this quarter. Continuing on with labor news, the number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits came back down last week, hovering near levels suggesting the U.S. labor market has been largely unaffected by the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes. Applications for unemployment benefits are a proxy for layoffs, and viewed with other employment data show the American workers are enjoying extraordinarily job security at the moment, despite an economy with some glaring weaknesses. U.S. job openings edged lower in October, moving one closely watched measure of the labor market in the direction Federal Reserve officials hope to see as they contemplate slowing the pace of upcoming interest rates increases. Again, as we reported a while back, you can find the video, the clip of ours. The Federal Reserve thinks that the millions of people, not necessarily millions of people, but a lot of people have to lose their jobs, and the job growth rate has to slow immensely to put workers back into competition with each other in order to bring equilibrium back to the economy. They don't want to see wage price inflation spiral where it's just wages go up, prices go up, people demand more wages to compensate for their price, and you just get this ratcheting effect where it just goes up and up and up, right? They're very concerned about that. It's an understandable concern. But the fact that they can only look at this from that lens is really bad for everybody involved, not just workers. It's bad for capital as well. Because what it means is they think that people have to be desperate in order to have a good economy. Desperate people don't make a good economy. Desperate people are desperate people. They don't spend. They don't have the capacity to actually make a robust economy. So we have to get out of this thinking. Just have to. With that said, though, the progress was modest, with openings dropping from about 10.6 million to 10.3 million, and the ratio of open jobs to each unemployed person falling to 1.7 from 1.85. The labor market is still strong. That is better. That is better than the nearly 2-to-1 levels seen as recently as July, but still far above the roughly 1.2 jobs to unemployed person that categorizes the years before the COVID-19 pandemic, when the unemployment rate was similar to October's 3.7% rate, but wage gains were considered consistent with the U.S. Central Bank's 2% inflation target. Now, one of these reasons could be long COVID. We're going to have to do a really deep dive into long COVID, actually. That's going to have to be an actual program because it's underreported, in my opinion, and it's bad. So we're going to talk about that. But part of the reason that we're might not be seeing the number of job openings closed a bit is because of more people impacted by long COVID than previously anticipated. Continuing on, though. Employers have added a healthy average of 407 jobs a month so far in 2022. And according to a survey by the data from FactSet, economists predict that the nation's gained an additional 200,000 jobs this month. The government will issue the November's jobs report tomorrow, and we'll have updates for you on our YouTube channel, Shorts, talk about it, on TikTok as well. Now, we're going to close out the news program. And if you're just joining us, or this is the first time you've ever watched us, we like to close out our news program with some news of the weird. something a little strange, a little bit of palate cleanser, a thing that that's just interesting, gross, says something about the world, the strange world in which we live. And today is no different. And today we're talking all about spiders. So what is this? Well, let's check out this. You've been warned. It's spiders. It's gross. Okay. If you're arachnophobic, please leave the area now. All right. So this is a spider eating some maggots. Let's watch. Look at this. Amateur footage shows the seemingly unsuspecting cameraman attempting to remove a maggot, only for an enormous spider to follow the larva into the open, as you just saw.
You gotta upload that paper.
Stop. All right. Spiders on a plane now. Well, look at this hairy boy. Like that. That's a cool looking spider, man. Look at this. Look at that. Look at that boy. All right. Tarantula. Got it. So 2 hairy 8-legged stowaways were blamed for unleashing a rare commotion on board a recent flight on air transit from the Dominican Republic to Canada that sent passengers screaming in panic and standing on their seats. In a wildlife invasion turned nightmare for anyone suffering from arachnophobia, and possibly fear of flying as well, not 1, but 2 tarantulas, potentially measuring as much as 20 centimeters across, were spotted roaming the carpeted cabin soon after in-flight meals had been served on a flight from Punta Cana, a popular holiday destination, to Montreal in Quebec. And as Aunt Tifa, I see what you did there, says, it is said that the average American swallows 8 to 12 spiders per year while they sleep. Oh, Quibbles, if you're just getting to Yee, you're way behind. All right. And lastly, we have this interesting little dancing guy. Spider pretty, spiders are courting. Let's watch this. We read. I am sad to say that we are out of time. We know you liked what you heard because you stayed with us to the end, so please smash that like button, that follow button, the subscribe button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. We'd like to give a special shout out to all of you because without you, I would just be a person shouting into the void that is the internet. And while that is fun, it is not nearly as fun interacting with all of you, so I greatly appreciate you joining me on this little endeavor. Also like to give a special shout out to our producer, Nikki, who produces this copy, helps me research, and makes this program what it is today, a more professional news organization, news copy. It's really good, and I appreciate her. We do this every Thursday, starting at roughly 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, going to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can catch us every Thursday, except on holidays or otherwise stated due to whatever might happen. We also do Cipher State, which is a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast where we dive deep into an issue facing the geopolitical stage with our co-host Tiberius D from Tiberius's channel. We also have other podcasts that we do. We like to do interviews and debates. And if there's anything you would like us to see, want to debate me on, want to invite me on your show, there's a number of ways you can get a hold of me. First off, you can join either our Discord server or hit me up on Discord. We're trying to build a community on Discord, a little more punchy than our community on Facebook, but all the same, we'd like to see you there. You can also hit us up on Twitter, which is our Twitter handle is @crowdsourcepoll, where I like to post anything that I feel like and maybe leave the platform at some point. I don't know. Depends on how Elon Musk does it. Yeah, we'll see about that. But that's a place that you can find me. It's publicly available. You can hit us up there. You can also look at our link tree and send us an email at admin@crowdsourcedpolitics.org as well. And so again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Stick around for a quick second. We will raid into somebody as soon as I figure out how to do that again. There we go. And as we say at Crowdsource Politics, keep your head up for the political storm. Apparently, it doesn't want to come up.